Day everyone, good day ma'am. Today my presentation is about elements of narrative. But first, let us all know what is narrative itself. Narrative is the telling of related events in a shared format that centers around a central theme or idea. Story is often considered a synonym for narrative. Narrative is told by a narrator of some type who relates all the actions and details to the reader as the story develops. And the action done by the narrator is called narrating. Narrative stories can be both fiction or fantasized, or comes all from imagination that doesn't exist in real life, and non-fiction, which is the opposite of fiction, that is more on giving information, insights, and all the related things that exist in real life. The narratives can be both oral or written. There are two types of narrative. First is fiction, and second is non-fiction. In narrative fiction, we have the examples such as novels, folktales, fairy tales, and short stories. And in narrative nonfiction, we have the examples such as history, biographies and autobiographies, academic texts, philosophy and insight, and of course journalism. Now that we know what is narrative, let us now proceed to what are the elements of narrative. The first element of narrative, which is also important, is the characters. Who are the characters? Characters are the person, creature, object, or animal that is represented in a narrative. The characters are either based on real life or just fictional. Characters are the reader's guide in understanding the narrative. With the characters in a narrative, they drive the story as a whole, and it's important because if there's no character, then there's no story at all. Characters can make the narrative more interesting by solving dilemmas and doing adventures and many other exciting tasks that is important and related to the story objective. Types of character. The first type of character, and also known as the protagonist. The protagonists are the leading character or one of the major character in a narrative. Narrative is synonymous with the good guy. Protagonist makes key decisions that affect the plot, primarily influencing the story and propelling it forward, and is often the character who faces the most significant obstacles. Examples of protagonists are Harry Potter from Harry Potter novel and film series, Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games novel and film series, James Bond from James Bond films, and the latest Guy from the film Free Guy of 2021. Now, if we have protagonist, then we also have antagonist, which is the bad guy. An antagonist is a character in a story who is presented as a chief foe of the protagonist, or in simplest term, is the bad guy of the story. Antagonist is the most common reason of having a conflict in a narrative, the principal opponent of the main character. Antagonist is used as plot device to set up conflicts, obstacles, or challenges for the protagonist. The well-known antagonists of different narratives are Thanos from Infinity Saga, Voldemort of Harry Potter series, Darth Vader from Star Wars, and also the scariest talking doll, Chappie from Child's Play. Third type of character is anti-hero, a central character in a story who lacks conventional heroic attributes, is a protagonist who typically lacks the traditional traits and qualities of a hero, such as trustworthiness, courage, and honesty. Anti-heroes often do good things, but they don't achieve good in the same way a hero does. Any anti-hero's backstory is typically revealed slowly to show that they do have a good side. Sometimes in narrative, anti-hero characters are sort of raincoat personality, which means they go with other characters that will benefit them. One of the best examples for this type of character is Loki in a fictional film. The example anti-hero characters are Joker from Joker film, Severus Snape from Harry Potter novel, Deadpool from the film, Loki from the Thor film. Next is supporting character. A supporting character is a person who plays a role in the life of a story's protagonist. The purpose of the supporting character is to help us better understand the main character. Supporting characters is sometimes a friend, lover, family, and allies, and doesn't mean the supporting character is less any important. They're not necessarily bad guys, but anyone in a narrative can affect a negative change in a protagonist and can become an antagonizer. Example of protagonists, example of supporting characters are Johanna, Pinit, and Pita Millard from the Hunger Games movie, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Hulk, and many more from Avengers film. Next is plot. Plot explain what is happening in the story. What is the first stage of plot? The first stage of plot is exposition. Exposition is the insertion of background information within a story or narrative. This information can be about the settings, characters, backstories, prior plot events, historical context, and many more. Exposition is important because it helps to ground individual within the work and give bearings. Not only does it provide clarity on characters and time, it also helps the reader or listener to orient themselves within the work. Exposition is designed to convey information that provides insight into a character or advance the story. Second stage is rising action. Rising action is the section of a story that leads towards its climax. Because of the increased tension as a book's central conflict became clear, the rising action is often what keeps you turning the pages, or also can be defined as the starting point of exciting narrative. Rising action of the story is all about the events that lead to the eventual climax, including character development and events that create suspense. Third stage of plot. Climax. The climax of the story is when the conflict of the plot is resolved. In some well-known narrative, it is often the most exciting part of the story. The hero saves the princess, discovers the buried treasure, or slays the dragon. In an imaginative thought, a climax is like a peak of a mountain where everything was seen from the beginning and on the ideas of the ending. Fourth is falling action. Falling action is what happens near the end of the story, after climax and resolution of the major conflict. Although the falling action is typically shorter than the rising action, it's not just winding down period. The falling action helps us more fully understand the character by showing us what choices they make after they face the crucial moment that all their actions had been leading up to. Last is resolution. The resolution is the end of the story. It occurs after the climax. It is when you learn what happens to the characters after the conflict is resolved. Resolutions are important components to story. This point in offers solution to the central conflict introduced in the beginning of the story. While not all resolutions are uplifting, they do tend to add closure for the reader. Addition from plot is flashback. A flashback is an interjected scene that takes the narrative back in time from current point in the story. Flashbacks are often used to recount events that happened before the story's primary sequence of events to fill in crucial backstory. Now, if you have the elements of narrative such as character and plot, you also have settings, which is also important in having a narrative. Now, a settings is the a settings is the time and geographic location within a narrative, either non-fiction or fiction. It is a literary element is the time and place an author chooses for literary work. To simply define what is settings, the settings is where the story takes place. First example of settings is dystopia. A dystopia is an imagined community or society that is dehumanizing and frightening. A dystopia is an antonym of a utopia, which is a perfect society. In a narrative genre, dystopia sets in the future, in a society where government is corrupt and or ineffectual. The best example for these settings is the city of Panem from Hunger Games film. Second is utopia, the opposite of dystopia. Utopia is an imaginary community or society that possesses highly desirable or nearly perfect qualities for its citizens. One example of this kind of settings is Hill Valley from Back to the Future. Alternate history. Alternate history as a genre of speculative fiction of stories in which one or more historical events occur and are resolved differently than in real life. Example from this is University of Santo Tomas, University of Santo Tomas and Bagong Bayan from or based on the Wattpad narrative. Next, next element of narrative is theme. What is theme? A theme is a central topic, subject, or message within a narrative. It tells the reader what the work is about. The theme is expressed through what the character says, do and think, and through the action that takes place within the story. The theme of a story is important because a story's theme is part of the reason why the author wrote the story. The author has a message he wants to share with the readers, and he uses his story as a way to get that message across. The well-known different kinds of themes are the following: good versus evil, love, courage, and perseverance or determination. Last is genre. What's genre? Or genres. A genre is a specific type of music, film, or writing. Genre consists of four elements or parts such as character, stories, plot, and settings. An equation from An equation for remembering the genre is story plus plot plus character plus settings equals genre. Examples of different genre types: comedy genre, fantasy genre, horror genre, mystery genre, drama genre, and science. Why elements of narratives are important? When students can describe literary elements such as character and plot, they are better able to interpret and respond to a text. Focusing on and discussing key details on literary elements supports the understanding of the author's message and purpose. Every element represents different explanation and interpretation of what is the meaning that authors want to deliver to the reader. That's all, thank you.